I'll say Teams, Microsoft Teams, because you
I wish you
have
would have
to
said
be.
Darwinbox, but yeah, I think that was expecting too much. But yes. Okay,
The
Teams.
Darwinbox also we use quite.
Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Dialogue with Darwin, wherein we talk about the evolution of HR and the future of work through conversations with some of the leading and inspiring minds in the field. Firstly, when I talk about HR and administration, you would rarely think of an individual who has first set up HR systems from scratch, handled industrial strikes with multiple trade unions being involved, led instrumentally recoveries during COVID, built ERP systems from scratch, driving ESG initiatives in each of his organizations, and also setting up a university all in one lifetime. Today we have with us Mr. Jitu Mishra, the Chief Administrative Officer at Indian School of Business, who's achieved all of this in one lifetime and kind of been a living example of building systems where none existed. Over the last 27 years, Jitu has been instrumental in shaping and inspiring organizations to grow. He has been associated with some of the leading organizations, both in the private and the public sector. Talk about NMDC, talk about Vedanta Aluminium, talk about Jindal Power and Steel. Over the last decade, he's had a lasting impact in the field of higher education. First, and most notably, OP Jindal Global University, wherein he had an instrumental role to play driving administrative and academic growth at the institution, making it an institution of eminence and leading them towards top QS world rankings. And latest, he's now leading the change, or should I say, driving the change at Indian School of Business by giving strategic direction to critical functions like HR, administration, operations, and project management, and of course, information technology. Jitu, it's an absolute delight to have you with us today.
Thank you, Ravi.
So, firstly, on a lighter and a winning note, the name Jitu symbolifies victory, right? And I'm sure the name itself would not have been that easy in terms of the journey that you've had. But what role has your formative years played in terms of shaping where you are in your career today? If you could tell us a little bit about that.
Thank you, Ravi. That's a great question. And so I did my master's in personal management and industrial relations way back in 1996 from Utkal University. I belong to Odisha, and I had all my education from Odisha. After completing my undergrad in physics, I pursued. Though I did a year master's in physics, but then I decided probably physics is not my cup of tea. I should try management, and appeared in the entrance and secured fourth position in the state and got into the masters in personal management and industrial relations. Passed out in 1996, and that point of time, public sector probably was the best option for people starting their career in HR or personal management or industrial relations. So I joined National Mineral Development Corporation Limited as a management trainee. They conducted a pan-India recruitment process through which they interviewed probably more than 400 people to select 6 of us to join as management trainee in the organization. And coincidentally, Hyderabad is the place where I started working in 1997. So I joined the organization as a management trainee, and my first place of posting was Diamond Mines Panna, which is India's only diamond mines. So after working there for 4 years, I got transferred to Belladilla iron ore mines, which is India's largest iron ore mines, and I was working there. So that time I was heading the employee relations in bilateral iron ore mines, which is again multiple trade unions, and the trade union leaders are leaders at the state level and at the central level, and handling multiple trade unions, getting into tripartite settlements, introducing a lot of things which could enable the workers to be aligned with the vision of the organization for growth, and at the same time providing them the kind of growth in the organization. So that both went hand in hand.
Right.
And I was playing that role there.
Hmm.
So after NMDC, working in NMDC for 9 years, I won't say NMDC had not given me opportunity to grow.
Hmm.
NMDC sent me to IIM Calcutta that time for 2 months for a future leaders program.
Hmm.
And so that time also I was probably the youngest in the entire team, the entire
Fantastic.
batch,
Hmm.
to undergo that program. Most of the people who attended that program that time were people with 10 to 15 years of experience in the company.
Right.
I was the person who was having 4.5 years of experience that point of time in
Hmm.
the company to undergo that leadership program at IIM Calcutta for 2 months.
Hmm.
That helped me in a big way in strategizing things, in understanding the business in a better way,
Hmm.
and to understand where my career is progressing.
Got it.
So after working for 9 years, I realized that probably I should explore the outside world in terms of the economy was opening up
Hmm.
and a lot of opportunities coming up in the private sector.
Right.
So that time I thought I should explore the opportunities in private sector organizations and applied for two companies, that was Aditya Birla and Jindal Steel and Power Limited.
Hmm.
Got through both the organizations,
Hmm.
and but I decided to choose Jindal Steel and Power Limited because it was a growing company that point of time. Aditya Birla was a very established set company,
Yeah.
and Jindal Steel and Power Limited was an upcoming company which had in Raigad, they had just one sponge iron plant. They were implementing the blast furnace, the rolling mill, the SMS, all these things were being established that time when I joined the company. So I thought that this organization will give me a lot of opportunity to learn and lot of opportunity to do new things in HR.
Hmm.
So I decided to join Jindal Steel and Power Limited that point of time in the year 2006. So I joined there in the plant in Raigad plant as part of the learning and development team, and in a plant which was expanding. At the same time, Mr. Jindal had a vision of creating a learning organization,
Hmm.
and so he had a lot of emphasis on HR, building HR processes and bringing in best HR practices. And that time, Mr. Rajan Singhal was also joined as the head of HR. So Mr. Singhal was an XLRI alum, having worked with companies like Nestle, Pepsi, Goodyear. He joined Jindal as the head of HR, and I got the opportunity of working with him. So I'll say that I got the opportunity to build HR systems. That point of time, we engaged Accenture to carry out HR transformation in the organization.
Okay.
So that point of time, we built all the HR processes.
Hmm.
We developed the competency framework for the organization and aligned all the HR systems with the competency framework, be it recruitment, be the learning need identification through
Right.
competency gap analysis, be it career progression through conducting assessment centers, or including the competencies into the performance
Right.
management system. The lot of work which happened during that time at Jiddal.
Right.
And also in the plant when I joined, there probably was no training happening that point of time, or barely one training happening once in a while. So we, from a zero kind of training, we reached a 3 man days kind of
Wow.
training per year for employees
Nice.
in Raigad plant, which was kind of appreciated by a lot of people.
Right.
In my stint in Jindal, I got transferred to the corporate HR team, and I played a role in the corporate HR team as part of the strategic HR.
Okay.
That time, I had driven the performance management system and L&D initiative across the group,
Right.
and we had graduate engineer trainees for the first time in the organization.
Lovely.
Since the organization was growing, we saw that in order to have a talent pool, a talent pipeline in the organization, we cannot solely rely on lateral hires. We had to groom leaders young, and we have to look at the engineering colleges. So we conducted an all India graduate engineer trainee recruitment drive and recruited some 300 graduate engineers at that point of time. I'm talking to you of the year 2008, which is quite unheard of that point of time, hiring so many graduate engineer trainees by a steel company.
Plus a subprime crisis going on that time as well.
Correct. And the recessions were just around the corner.
Correct.
So these were the formative years. Then I joined Vedanta Limited as the head of HR, but that is part of a separate story in my career journey.
Right.
But these are the formative years, and The formative years, I'll say, Ravi, I probably had very good mentors. I
Mm,
had been lucky enough, fortunate enough
mm,
to have very good mentors in my early life.
mm,
Mr. Velu, who was my head of HR in an MDC,
mm,
so he gave me a lot of opportunity. And Mr. Singhal, when I was working in Jindal,
mm,
also gave me a lot of opportunity to experiment with new things in
mm,
HR
mm.
and to introduce new policies and processes in the organization.
Right. Fantastic. Now that we've covered the formative years, one obvious question comes to mind is when you talked about your journey throughout, you've joined organizations either at a phase where it was early or you were kind of building things from scratch. And in your discussions also, you've discussed about a lot of firsts in your career, right? And some of them are like quite phenomenal from an industry perspective also. So maybe if you could shed some light on some of the firsts that were there that you actually were instrumental in bringing about in these organizations.
That's very interesting, Ravi. In fact, I got the opportunity to do a lot of things for the first time in many organizations. So let me take you back to NMDC.
Mm,
So when I was in NMDC and when I got transferred to India's largest iron ore mines,
mm,
so I was appointed as the head of employee relations.
mm,
I was 28
mm,
that point of time, 27 or 28,
mm,
and my predecessor was a 55-year-old person.
mm,
So managing two large trade unions
mm.
with entering into tripartite settlements
Yeah.
involving the central labor commissioners,
Mm,
it was a very amazing experience that I got.
right.
But I'll thank my mentor for giving me this opportunity
Right.
and leading the employee relation at that point of time.
Mm,
When I was in Jindal, so based on my early part of my career in the Raigad plant, where I drove a lot of HR initiatives, I was transferred to the corporate office.
mm,
So again, I was the first person to be transferred in JSPL from a plant HR system to a corporate HR system.
right.
Always they had two different
Mm,
HR systems in the organization.
mm,
So that was again another first
mm,
which I which I did in my career.
mm,
Coming back to Jindal, so I joined as the head of HR.
mm,
But when we were hiring a chief operating officer for the university has grown in leaps and bounds. So
mm,
I'll slightly tell you about the OP Jindal Global University story, how it
mm, mm,
the rise, the growth happened.
right.
So when I joined in 2013, there were 700 students,
Mm,
65 faculty members, and 65 odd administrative staff in the
mm,
university.
mm.
So when I left in 2023 October, there were 10,000 students,
Wow.
1,115 full-time faculty members,
Wow.
and more than 1,000 administrative staff,
Right.
more than 2,000 outsourced staff
Mm,
working on various roles.
right.
So we were growing in leaps and bounds. Every year we were adding almost 1,500 students and adding 150 to 200 faculty members and 150 staff every year on a year-on-year basis.
Mm,
So in 2018, when we thought that the university has grown enough and we should have someone in the system to drive the next level of growth and at the same time consolidating, we were thinking for consolidating all the administrative processes.
mm,
We were looking out to hire a chief operating officer. And that
right.
point of time, we met a number of people, but
Mm,
the vice chancellor,
mm,
Professor Raj, who I'll say is another mentor in my life who has helped me in great way in shaping up my career.
mm,
So Professor Raz gave me this opportunity and asked me that I would like to take up the position of Chief Operating Officer at
mm,
Jindal,
mm,
and I took up that opportunity. So that was the first Chief Operating Officer role in the university, and the university setup also that time these kind of roles were unique and for the first time.
mm.
So many universities and educational institutions followed
After
it,
that. Mm,
but it was the first time a CEO role was created and I headed that. I got
excellent.
that role.
Right.
In ISB also, when I took up this role of Chief Administrative Officer for the first time,
Mm,
they have created this role of Chief Administrative Officer, and I also joined here as a Chief Administrative Officer. So there are a lot of firsts in my career, but Ravi, I'll say that I'll give credit to the hard work. I'll give credit to my mentors.
mm,
I'll give credit to my family as well
mm,
for achieving all of that.
right.
When you say building from scratch, I'll give you the example of Jindal again. The
Mm,
kind of growth there we achieved. It was not only about the growth in student numbers or faculty numbers or staff numbers. I'll tell you the kind of growth in terms of the QS rankings.
Mm.
So we were nowhere in the rankings. So
Mm.
when we decided to enter the QS rankings, we deciphered the ranking parameters
Mm.
and decided on which parameters we should
Focus.
invest
Mm.
so that we can crack the rankings.
Absolutely.
So we looked at hiring international faculty.
Mm.
So Jindal University at that time was having probably 10 or 11 international faculty.
Mm.
And we went on to hire international faculty. And when I left, we had more than 150 full-time international faculty from 51 countries.
Fantastic.
So, and all of them were staying in a place called Sonipat.
Yes.
So we were successful in building a educational ecosystem in Sonipat, which enabled these faculty members to come from across the globe.
Mm.
They were either teaching in international universities or they were studying there.
Right.
And they came to India to teach at a place called Sonipat, which is in rural Haryana.
Absolutely.
So it's not only about attracting them. So we created policies and processes which are very research focused, very research driven, so that they are interested and it inspired them to join Jindal University. And at the same time, we created a township at a place called Sonipat, where we were managing 900 houses in that township, and all the faculty were living there. So we were taking care of their every requirement so that they could focus on the university and the education and teaching and research. So we had introduced very innovative publication policies, which also helped us in retaining this faculty.
Right.
So these are some of the stories of building from scratch. And also when I had worked with two infrastructure companies during my career, company called DSC Limited, which was that point of time India's leading infrastructure company, or later on I joined ARSS Infrastructure, which was an upcoming infrastructure company in the country. So in both these companies, when I joined, there was no HR processes or systems. So I joined these companies, built HR processes and systems, hired professionals from across the industry, and hired young engineers, provided them a career path. So I'm very proud of these things that I have done in these companies.
Fantastic, sir. I'm looking back on it. It's been a stellar journey for sure. And I'm just thinking about the persuasive skills that you would have had to convince faculty to come to Sonipat and stay there. So I think kudos to you on all the achievements. So you've been entrusted with the mantle of a leader at a very young age, and you talked about a lot of mentors in your career as well. Could you talk about how you have kind of given back in that space to the next generation, so to speak? I mean, that would be interesting to hear as well.
Yeah.
And what should be like view for some of the leaders that are there? Take a cue from you in terms of what you're doing in this front.
Ravi, one thing is you have to give opportunity to people. You have to provide them autonomy and independence in whatever they do. And you have to encourage them that even if they fail in whatever they are doing, you should be there to support them. That is what I have always believed. And whenever there is something going well, they should get the credit. The team should get the credit. It's not me who should get the credit. So I have always believed in investing in people when they are very young. So I've always working with young people. So that's when I spoke about the graduate engineer trainee scheme be it in Jindal Steel and Power Limited, or be it in the infrastructure companies I worked, or a very innovative scheme called University Administrative Service (UAS), which I launched in Jindal University.
Okay.
So that was modeled with TAS, the Tata Administrative Services.
Right.
So we hired young people and we put them under a leadership training for a period of 6 months, and then appointed them as US executives in the university administrative system. Because one thing I realized after coming to higher education almost 12 years ago, that there is a dearth of good leaders in the industry, because not many people were enthusiastic about coming to higher education.
Fair.
So attracting people from industry was always a challenge. So I thought, why not? I hired people young and groom them in leadership roles. So I experimented that with a US scheme in Jindal and was very successful. And that scheme, I'm very happy that that scheme is still there and they're still hiring people through that scheme. Also, I introduced something called Jindal Lead Management Group in JSPL. Again, it was a very unique policy through which we recruited young people from IITs and IIMs and groomed them for a period of 1 year by giving them multiple projects and exposure to work with various leaders in the organization. And after 1 year, we were confirming them in the leadership roles.
Right.
So that was again a very unique thing that I did for young people. And here also in ISP for the first time, we have university as a higher education institution. We hire graduate trainees. That is again a very
Right.
innovative thing that we started. We have young graduates, undergrads from SRCC, from St. Stephen's, from
Yeah.
Loyola, and from St. Xavier's.
Right.
So we hire all these people, and we also hire from Jamia and IIMC. We hire these people young and hire them as graduate trainees and management trainees and put them in various departments.
Right.
So I believe that giving opportunity to these people at a very young age and giving them a freedom and autonomy in whatever work they do helps them in a long way.
Fantastic. So while you were narrating this answer, the one visual that came to my mind was Rahul Dravid at Rajasthan Royals. The way he's groomed youngsters, and you've done a fantastic job on that front at your level as well, sir. One interesting question that comes to mind is that when you talk about your role in HR, and we talk about HR being equal to business outcomes, right? And you've spent a lot of time in the fraternity, plus specifically the aluminum industry, wherein it's highly market driven. So was there at any point a mandate that you as the head of HR would need to manage both the top line and bottom line for the organization? And how did you go about it? And did that kind of like lead to a DNA that you've continued from then on?
Very interesting, Ravi. When I joined Vedanta, was my first role as the head of HR. So I left Jindal Steel to join Vedanta in the year 2008 as the head HR for their expansion projects, which was coming up in Chhattisgarh. So they were setting up a 1200 megawatt power plant and a 7 LTP aluminum smelter that time, a huge, challenging task.
Right.
So that time, if you remember, the global recession happened. And aluminum, which was trading, aluminum is driven by the LME. LME drives the aluminum price.
Correct.
And aluminum was at a rate of operating at a rate of $2,700 US at that point of time. Suddenly it crashed to $1,900.
Right.
We were, our production cost was around 2,100 at that point of time.
Okay.
So as a company, we sat together and we thought how we can bring down the cost of production so that we can still break even, at least even if we don't make any profit. And Vedanta took over Balco, so which is a labor intensive, labor intensive and union, very highly unionized place. So that time, aligning these unions with the intention to reduce the cost of production was a big task.
Yeah.
So we introduced a very innovative voluntary retirement scheme that point of time, and we introduced practices which brought down the production cost and increased productivity in the plant. And we had achieved production cost of $1,700 at that point of time.
Okay.
So even if the entire aluminum industry was not doing well, so Vedanta was breaking even or making some money during the time of recession as well.
Fantastic.
So it was, so there one point I will always remember, my CEO used to tell me, Mr. Gunjan Gupta, he always used to tell me, you bring in any HR process that can contribute to my top line or bottom line. Otherwise, there is no point in implementing any HR process. So
Okay.
he is the person who taught me that whatever you do in HR, whatever you think in HR, that should be aligned very much to the business. So that I remember always till today. So whatever I do, I always think that HR is a service function and we are there to provide support to the core functions, be it in any industry. I've worked in multiple industries, let it be mining, metal, infra, or now higher ed. So it's always, I believe that HR can contribute only when it is aligned to the business.
Absolutely. Right. I mean, noble words, sir. I think in the given context today also, if you look at it, I think business outcomes is what drives a lot of things within organizations. And it's important for HR to be aligned to that as well. Now, coming to another interesting aspect, right? So you've transformed HR practices and the things that you've done in several organizations as well. What is one underrated system or let's say process that you think that every HR team should invest in order to kind of increase productivity?
The only thing that all HR folks should focus on is automation and technology.
Mm.
That is the only thing which can add a lot of value in whatever we are doing.
Right.
Because there are multiple processes, multiple systems in any organization,
Mm.
and if they don't talk to each other,
Mm.
then it doesn't add any value
Right.
to the HR processes. So
Right.
something like Darwinbox
Mm.
helps in a big way in improving the HR processes and systems. I'm telling it to you from my personal experience. I had implemented Darwinbox in Jindal University and now in ISB,
Yeah.
and I have reaped benefit from both of that.
Mm.
Also in ISB, we are doing a very interesting thing called we have a committee called Process Automation and Artificial Intelligence Committee.
Excellent.
We call it PI.
Okay.
So there we meet all the HODs, all the process owners,
Mm.
and we identify which processes can be automated
Mm.
using artificial intelligence or RPA.
Mm.
So we are doing a lot of stuff on that.
Mm.
So being a HR person,
Mm.
I am very instrumental being the part of that committee and leading that committee
Mm.
to bring in automation in the organization. So HR people has have to be aligned to automation and technology. That's
Mm.
what I'll say.
Right. And I'll come to that in a later question as well because it's a very interesting point that you touched there. But before getting to that, I mean, you spent a good amount of time, and I would probably consider you as one of the stalwarts in higher education today. What is the biggest myth, according to you, when it comes to, let's say, leading operations in a university kind of an environment, and a myth that you would like to bust in front of the audience today?
Ravi, when I joined OP Jindal Global University in 2013, not many people were looking at higher ed as a career option.
Hmm.
So higher ed was always considered to be very bureaucratic and having very inefficient systems and processes.
Hmm.
So when I joined OP Chandra Global University, though I also needed a lot of persuasion for that, but when I joined the university, I understood that it's not a thing that what
Hmm.
people consider outside is true.
Hmm.
So in fact, higher ed had a lot of focus on investing a lot of resources
Hmm.
on operations
Right.
because higher ed institutions have large infrastructure. It's not only the infrastructure in terms of the buildings,
Hmm.
also in terms of the AV facility that they have in the classrooms
Hmm.
or in the conference rooms or in the because nowadays with online teaching has become very important.
Hmm.
And after that, there are a lot of emphasis on having these AV facilities,
Hmm.
latest and state of the art AV facilities in the
Right.
classrooms.
Right.
So operations is a thing that I considered like anyone else from outside that there is nothing in higher ed institutions. But when I joined, I realized, and also there has been a lot of focus on improving the infrastructure while being sustainable.
Got it.
So
Hmm.
in ISP, we have a lot of emphasis on sustainability,
Hmm.
and we defined our scope 1 and scope 2 targets as well.
Right.
And while we do a lot of work on generating solar energy or rainwater harvesting
Hmm.
or doing some value adds in infrastructure and engineering to reduce consumption of electricity,
Hmm.
we also have a very strong focus on sustainability and environment.
Fantastic. And as a university, I would expect you to lead by example on that front because that's one of the key things that we look at, especially in the context of where climate change is today. Great, sir. So you talked about the fact that when you took up one of the leadership roles, I mean, your predecessor was significantly older and you were fairly young at that point in time. So when you're trying to lead digital transformation, especially there is a lot of resistance sometimes that comes in, and obviously there's an incumbency that is set in. There's a resistance to kind of change or a friction that is associated with it. How have you successfully navigated that kind of an environment and also kind of looked at advocating change management to senior leadership? Because I think some of the times it has to be top down, but at the same time it has to be bottom up also, because if people down the lane are not aligned, it will not percolate, right? So how did you manage that piece?
Ravi, when you look at leaders, you will find that there are two type of leaders.
Hmm.
One who are disruptors
Hmm.
and one who are guardians of status quo.
Okay.
So
Fair.
there will always be two type of
Right.
leaders. So when you drive anything new in any organization,
Hmm.
you should understand what kind of leader you are working with, and you have to perfect your pitch according to the leadership style.
Okay.
Unless you have the buy-in,
Hmm.
you cannot drive any change.
Hmm. Hmm.
So they should understand that if a person is a guardian of status quo, he should not be fearing that his world will go upside down if you bring this change.
Okay. Fair.
And someone who is disruptor will always enjoy change,
Hmm.
but at the same time, he should also be controlled, or she should also be controlled,
Hmm.
so that that change does not disrupt the entire business environment.
Right.
So while doing all these HR transformations or IT transformations in
Multiple.
my
Yeah.
last two organizations, so I always kept this thing in mind. It's not only managing the people who are senior to you, it's also managing your peers who are also business leaders and who are also driving their functions.
Hmm.
So you have to take them along while doing all this change management.
Hmm.
So while doing one such change management in at ISB as well, when we decided to introduce the competency framework, so that is one example which I'll give.
Hmm.
It was a very Herculean task
Hmm.
to make everyone understand
Right.
that why a competency framework is important for administrative staff in an higher education institution.
Right.
So that had to undergo a lot of meetings, lot of deliberations, and lot of acceptance from not only the senior leaders but also from my contemporaries who also are CXOs, and they have had also to understand
Hmm.
why it is important for how is important for doing whatever you do. So another thing I'll say that when we introduced Darwinbox, and so when I joined in 2023 October or November rather, Darwinbox, we already had Darwinbox, but we were only using the time management on it. So
Okay.
it was only leave and attendance, that was the only thing being done. So now I'm very happy that we use it for our entire payroll. We use it for performance management system. We use it for recruitment, the entire end-to-end recruitment. And also we are looking at other modules. We plan to have OKRs on it. We plan to have the individual development plans and other things on it. So
Fantastic.
there's a lot of push required, but at the same time, I had to make the leaders understand how it's going to make their life easier.
Right.
So that's what you
Fantastic.
should do, I'll say.
So to me, I think the word that comes to mind is flexing, because I mean, that's a brilliant advice, because you're actually tweaking your style to the leadership of the individual and then figuring out how to convince. And that's probably how you convince so many international faculty to join you as well. So great, sir. Now, a very interesting segment that becomes important is you already have a diverse team at ISB, right? And I want to understand from you, how does diversity help in let's say, not just building, but also driving organizational culture and performance, and your thoughts around it?
So I have always worked on improving diversity in all the jobs that I have done. In OPG Global University, so 55% of the total faculty were women,
Okay.
and 47% of the total leadership positions were held by women.
Lovely.
So that was again a very significant achievement for a young university at that point of time. And more than 35% staff were also women. So at ISP, we're still working on that. In business education, it's very difficult to maintain that kind of diversity, but we are actively working towards that, achieving that kind of diversity, having a very healthy diversity. But in administrative staff, we have a very healthy diversity where more than 40% of our total staff are women, and many people in the leadership roles are also women. So when you have people from diverse backgrounds, when they come from different backgrounds, different experiences, and so they challenge each other's assumptions. So they and they will always come with new ideas. So that helps in more collaboration and better teamwork, and finally a better decision making. That's how I'll say diversity helps organizations, and I've seen through my journey in these organizations that having a diverse workforce has always helped us in looking at things from a different perspective and taking better decisions.
Fantastic. One avenue that I would like to probably want your opinion on, and especially had I asked this question 2 years ago, it would have meant different things. But in today's context, I can't leave an interview without an AI question, right? Because there's a lot that's happening in the space, and literally things are changing every single day, right? So it's true that AI is transforming all industries. I wanted to understand your take on how, and you talked about automation in the middle of the interview as well. How is AI leading to bring about transformation in the higher education and edtech space? And secondly, what does that mean for the HR and administrative function as well, right? So if you could shed some thoughts around that.
So, as an administrator, I'll say that it is definitely helping us in enhancing administrative efficiency. So, by getting rid of redundant processes and systems, identifying the routine works that or manual works that we do. I gave you the example of PI that we have here,
Right.
the Process Automation and Artificial Intelligence Committee.
Mm.
So, it helps us in getting rid of many routine manual processes. So, that is one thing which it is going to help in enhancing administrative efficiency. The second thing is the teaching can be more tailored based on individual needs. So that is one thing I'm looking at higher education is witnessing. And research is going to benefit in a big way because AI is helping in automating the data analysis and the literature reviews. So the researchers will get more time for interpretation and innovation.
Right.
So that will help higher education in a big way. So
Mm.
AI is going to be there,
Mm.
and we all have to adapt to it. So in HR also, I know you people are currently working a lot on having integrating AI into all the processes that Darwinbox is offering. So and we look forward to using all of that in the coming months or in the coming year
Right.
to benefit from that.
Perfect. Sometimes it's a forced decision or a forced disruption that leads you to change, and it's sometimes required because to me, technically, online education today has actually opened up firstly a revenue stream, and second, it has also increased accessibility of education to a lot of folks who were probably underserved earlier.
I agree.
So, from that perspective, what is your thought in terms of where is ISB going forward? It's one of the most reputed and renowned institutions, not just in India but globally. But what's the vision that ISB holds as of today?
ISP is in a very interesting phase right now, Ravi. So we always had a 1 year PGP program,
Mm.
and from this year we are starting a YL program. We call it PGP YL, which through which we
The young leaders,
young
basically.
leaders
Yeah, right,
program.
right.
So 20 months.
I wish it was there when I was trying to apply, sir.
Yeah.
That time you guys just wanted a lot of experience, but great that it's there now.
Yeah, it's there now. So any fresh undergrad can apply for the program
Right.
through CAT, GMAT, and GRE, and there's a
Right.
very rigorous selection process. But in the first year, we are having an intake of 140 students this year
Okay.
for undergoing this 20 months YL program. So it's a very interesting program that we have started, which was not there in ISP earlier. Again, another interesting thing that we have started through iVentures is a 6 months program for young budding entrepreneurs.
Lovely.
So it's you don't need any formal education for taking this program. You apply for the program through your business ideas and what kind of business idea that you have. And we started this program 6 months back. It's a 6 months program, and we for the first batch we received 1,500 applications,
Wow.
and we took 50 of them, and they have completed the 6 months. So 16 of them have got some seed fund from the school.
Fantastic.
And we are grooming them for the next 6 months. So they get an opportunity to we shape them up to become the next future entrepreneurs of India. So
Fantastic.
that is another very interesting space which ISB has entered. It has created a lot of interest in the market, this iVentures program and the YL program. Also, we are looking at online space very closely, and you will hear some interesting announcements in the coming future about the online education that
Fantastic.
ISB will come up with.
Okay.
We have some offerings on online through our digital learning or the executive education department, but those are primarily for working professionals.
Right. I'm pursuing one of them myself.
Yeah, great, great.
Right.
And but you'll hear some interesting announcements in this space.
What's heartening to hear from what you say, sir, is that 1,500 young people applied for this, and it actually augurs really well for a glowing India in the near future. Fantastic to hear this. Now I'm going to put you in a bit of a spot. So this is the rapid fire section. So I'm going to ask you some questions wherein I don't want you to think. Just
Okay.
respond
Okay.
immediately, whatever comes to mind. Right?
Okay.
If you could redo one career decision, what would it be?
Well, whatever I've done in my life, I'm happy and content in whatever decisions that I've taken.
This is a politically correct answer. Yeah.
I'll say that probably I could have stayed in Vedanta for a few more years.
Okay.
So my personal family situation that point of time didn't allow me to do that.
Okay.
But I wish I could have stayed with that organization for a few more years.
Okay. One project or period which you consider as your biggest achievement.
So I'll say that the institution of eminence which we achieved at OP Jindal Global University, I was part of the core team in preparing the report for the empowered panel of experts of Government of India and presented it before them.
Fantastic.
So as part of the team for presenting it, and we got the Indian Institute of Eminence status from Government of India. I'll say that there are many, but I'll pick it as
Yeah, I think
one of the
I would have probably gone with that one also. But again, too many things in your career that you've achieved. What is one tool or platform that you can't live without?
tricky. I'll say Teams, Microsoft Teams, because you
I wish you would have said Darwinbox, but yeah, I think that was expecting too much. But yes. Okay.
The
Teams.
Darwinbox also we use quite frequently on while on the move.
Right.
Teams is the tool that I'll
Right.
say.
What is the most underrated skill in HR?
Underrated skill, I'll say analyzing data and interpreting it for action. That I'll say is the most underrated skill. Many HR people do not look at analyzing the data and act on that.
Right. Could you, I mean, maybe set some examples of how you've done that in your own journey? I mean, any examples of how you leverage data to come up with insights?
For a small example, you can look at the attrition, employee attrition, and you can look at the data and decipher it to understand what kind of action plan you should take to have people staying in your organization for a longer time. So that is one thing I'll say the data is the one thing which can drive your decisions.
Absolutely. So, in the context of data-driven decisions itself, I mean, who's actually looking at that data and actually leveraging those for insights as of today? I mean, according to you?
So not most of the HR people are doing that. So that's where platforms like Darwinbox will play a major role, where that can with the use of AI and it can become more data driven, and we can get reports through Darwinbox to analyze the data properly. So I'll say that we'll need more technology to come into HR space and help HR leaders in taking data driven decisions.
Fantastic. You've led transformation across multiple sectors, right? We talked about metals, mining, infrastructure, higher education as well. What's the one skill that has helped you across all industries? I mean, is there something common thread that helped you across?
I'll say lead with empathy and act with purpose.
Nice.
So
Okay.
that is one thing which will help, because you need to have concern for people in whatever you do in your life. So I've always believed in that concept.
Fantastic, sir. And I think, true to your name, I think your journey so far itself has been a victory in many ways. And it was an absolute delight to have you with us on this episode of Dialogue with Darwin, and wishing you many, many more years of success, not just as at ISB, but beyond as well. It was a delight to have you with us today, sir.
Thank you so much, Ravi.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.